Well, after the Civil War, all black towns grew in Indian Territory when former slaves of the 5 civilized tribes settled together for mutual protection and economic security. When the land run of 1889 opened up yet more land to non-Indian settlement, African Americans from the Old South rushed to the newly created territory of Oklahoma seeking freedom. But the passage of segregationist Jim Crow laws after statehood caused many African Americans to become disillusioned and leave. But of those who stayed, some began a protracted battle for civil rights that often started in the classroom and ended up in the courts, painstakingly chipping away at a world that was separate but seldom equal. Ada Lois Scipio Fisher was the first black student admitted to the University of Oklahoma School of Law after a major civil rights lawsuit in the 1940s. And I had a chance to sit down with her son, the historian Bruce Fisher, to talk about the impact her legacy has had on every classroom in America. So Bruce, when I think about the civil rights struggle here in Oklahoma, I think of it beginning with your mother.
Which was, Mom applied for admission to the University of Oklahoma in 1946. That would be where a lot of people would start. And then other people thought it started much earlier than that, and I know as a matter of fact it did. So the Oklahoma elected its first African American to the legislature in 1908, in January of 1908. Shortly after that, Oklahoma passed a law that said that if your grandfather couldn't vote, you couldn't vote, and that was called the Grandfather Clause. And so by 1910, it was put up for a vote of the people, and the people of Oklahoma passed that bill. So the civil rights struggle started right then.
In effect, bringing the segregationist Jim Crow laws of the South into the Sooner State. But beginning in the mid-1940s, a nationwide, concerted effort began to try to integrate the classroom.
My mom was living in Chickasha. She had just finished going to college, and the medical doctor in Chickasha, W.A.J. Bullock, he said, I think we got just the right person right here in Chickasha. So he met with my grandfather, my grandmother, and my uncle, Lemuel Scipio. And they asked him if he would be the plaintiff. See, Lemuel, he was a valedictorian in high school when he graduated. He had gone to fight in World War II, and when he got back, and he said, well, I think it's a good idea, but I don't want to go through another fight. My mother was sitting in the room at the time. She also was valedictorian in her class. She said, I'll do it. And so that's how she got to be the plaintiff.
By being the first African American to apply to OU's law school.
In 1948, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Oklahoma had separate but equal status. You know, they said they don't care about that, but based on the Constitution, if she's got a right to get a legal education as soon as anybody else does. And so by that ruling, the University of Oklahoma and the state of Oklahoma were faced with a challenge. Either let her in or close the University Law School down. And so my mom got a telegram about a week after she got back from D.C., and the telegram said, we've just opened the Langston University School of Law. So instead of letting her in there, they created a law school overnight at the state capitol. And she was the one student. And they said that she could use the Capitol Library. But my mom and Thurgood and Roscoe said, oh no, we're not going to get out that easy. A week later, Roscoe Dungy got 6 other people that were willing to go down and apply for admission at the University of Oklahoma, and they did. They had a big press conference at OU, and you had 6 African Americans to apply for higher education, for architecture, for several other, and they said, let's see you build those schools overnight. And they couldn't do that. And so they had to finally decide to open it up for them. So it wasn't until the following year that she actually entered the University of Oklahoma, 1949, and she graduated in 1951. And that changed everything.
And not only was separate but equal foolish and certainly wrong, it was also expensive.
People understood at that point that they could not afford to have dual education systems. I thought about my mom when that case was ruled on. It was the first time that black students and white students sat in a classroom since statehood, and the challenge was in it. So we didn't know if African Americans could accomplish as much as any other student. Nobody knew because we hadn't tried it. When my mom applied, not only during the summer of '49, not only was she the only African American, she was the only woman. And the guys in the law school would come in and see the sign up over this chair that they set for my mom at the back of the classroom, and the sign over saying colored. And the guys would come in and take the sign down and throw it outside, and they'd have to come back and put it up the next week. But they were very supportive of my mom. And she said that there's no way she would have survived had it not been for the guys in the law school at that time.
Well, growing up, Bruce Fisher says he never knew about his mother's place in history. In fact, as a senior in high school, when asked to find a speaker on Black history, he told his principal he didn't know one. About 2 years later, Ada Fisher asked her son, now a college student, to drive her to a funeral in Tulsa. As it turned out, the funeral was that of her resident Oklahoma attorney in that landmark case. Still, Bruce didn't know of the connection. It was only after he heard his mother shout out, "Thurgood!" and Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall turned around and hugged her that Bruce began to learn that his mother played a vital role in ending segregation.